Sophia Burns, a flight attendant with over a decade of experience, had always prided herself on her impeccable work ethic. Known for her strict adherence to the rules, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had earned her place. But on a routine flight, her pride would lead to a mistake that would alter the course of her career forever. The incident began innocuously enough, a toddler, Leo, squirming in his seat near the back of the plane. The child, no older than 3, was fussing softly, his small voice rising in the quiet cabin. Sophia, ever the professional, scanned the aisles, making sure everything was in order. Her sharp eyes locked on the source of the noise, and she felt her patience fraying. She'd dealt with noisy passengers before, but this was different. Leo's soft cries seemed to grate on her nerves more than usual. Tired from an exhausting week of flights, she couldn't ignore it. Stepping down the aisle, her polished shoes clicking sharply against the floor, Sophia approached Leo and his mother, Karen. "Please, ma'am, could you quiet your child?" Sophia's tone was firm, almost cold. "The other passengers are trying to relax." Karen, looking exhausted herself, looked up with a weary smile. "I'm sorry. He's just upset. He's had a long day." Sophia barely listened, her eyes narrowed. "I've heard it all before," she muttered, her patience worn thin. "Please try harder." Before Karen could respond, Leo shifted, his small foot brushing against Sophia's uniform. In that moment, something snapped inside her. With a swift motion, she grabbed the toddler's arm and slapped his hand. The slap wasn't hard, but the sound echoed in the cabin. Leo let out a sharp cry, his eyes wide with confusion and pain. Karen gasped, pulling Leo closer to her. The other passengers fell silent, exchanging shocked glances as the tension in the air thickened. Sophia stood there, her hands still in the air, as if she couldn't believe what she had just done. Karen's face turned pale as she hugged her son, her eyes filled with shock. "How could you—" Karen's voice trembled, her hands shaking as she clutched Leo to her chest. But Sophia simply straightened her posture, smoothed her uniform, and walked away with a huff. "Teach your child some manners," she muttered under her breath as she made her way down the aisle, pretending as if nothing had happened. But then, a voice cut through the tension, a voice that sent a chill down Sophia's spine. "Did you just strike my child?" Sophia froze. She turned slowly, her heart pounding as she recognized the voice. It was Nathan Drake, the owner of Horizon Airways, the airline she had worked for over the years. She tried to maintain her composure, though her mind was racing. He was disturbing the passengers, she tried to justify, her voice calm but strained. Nathan didn't react. He stood up from his seat, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel small. As he walked toward her, the whole cabin seemed to hold its breath. "You hit my son," he repeated, his voice low but firm. His presence radiated authority, and it was clear from the passengers' expressions that they were beginning to understand who he was. Sophia's heart sank. She had crossed the line, and now the weight of her mistake was crashing down on her. Nathan's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the storm she now found herself in. I didn't know, sir," Sophia stammered, her hands suddenly trembling. But her words felt hollow, and she could see Nathan wasn't convinced. "Don't lie to me," he said, his words cutting through the air like a blade. "You put your hands on my child. You'll answer for this." The tension in the cabin grew unbearable. The flight attendant who had once commanded respect was now at the mercy of the man who owned the very airline she worked for. As Nathan ordered the captain to be called, Sophia's mind raced, but it was too late to undo her actions. A young flight attendant arrived with the captain shortly after, and Nathan wasted no time. "Sophia Burns," he said, his voice steady but cold. "You're relieved of duty, effective immediately." The words hit Sophia like a ton of bricks. Her career, the one she had worked so hard to build, had just unraveled in a matter of seconds. The captain's voice was firm as well, though not unkind. "Please remain in your seat, Miss Burns. You'll be escorted off the plane when we land." Sophia's stomach twisted as the reality of her situation sank in. She was no longer in control. She was the one being told what to do. As the plane descended, She sat there in stunned silence, her mind spinning. She had once been someone who commanded attention, but now she was powerless. The passengers around her resumed their conversations, but the weight of her failure pressed down on Sophia. She had been reduced to just another employee, her authority gone in an instant. When the plane landed, the humiliation was overwhelming. A security officer stood at the door, waiting to escort her off the plane. As Sophia walked down the aisle, she saw Nathan talking quietly to another executive, completely unfazed by her presence. To him, she was already forgotten. She walked off the plane slowly, her every step feeling heavier than the last. The passengers who had once admired her now looked past her, their faces filled with indifference. Sophia felt like a ghost as she left the aircraft, knowing that her career was over. Outside, the airport felt cold and sterile. She was escorted through the hallways by the security officer, her mind reeling. The passengers she had once served with such authority now watched her walk away in shame. Sophia had lost everything, not just her job, but her pride, her identity, and the respect she had once commanded. She had been brought low by her own actions, a simple, thoughtless mistake that cost her everything. As she stood outside the airport, her heart heavy with regret, she understood something she had never fully grasped before. Power was not about control. It was about respect. She had never shown it, not truly. And now, she was learning the hard way that without respect, there was no authority. The lesson would stay with her forever. Sophia Burns, once a respected flight attendant who commanded authority with every step, now stood outside the airport, facing the harsh consequences of her actions. The world around her seemed indifferent to her downfall, the bustling terminal offering no comfort or sympathy. It was a sharp contrast to the confidence she had once carried, a confidence that had been built on control and perfection. But in a single, impulsive moment, she had lost it all. Her mistake wasn't just about a slap. It was the way she had treated a child, a mother, and ultimately herself. It wasn't the outburst that would define her, but the lack of empathy, the disregard for others' humanity that ultimately led to her undoing. She had forgotten the core lesson that had eluded her throughout her career. True authority comes from respect, not fear. In the relentless pursuit of power and discipline, she had overlooked kindness. Nathan Drake had never raised his voice. His presence alone had been enough to dismantle the life Sophia had so carefully crafted. He didn't need to shout or lecture. His actions spoke louder than any words could. The stark difference between their approaches was now clear to her. Sophia had tried to control a situation, but Nathan had shown her that influence isn't about control at all. It's about understanding, compassion, and knowing when to wield power wisely. As she walked away from the airport, Sophia knew that her career in aviation was over. But more than that, she knew that she had lost something far more valuable than her job, her sense of integrity. Her journey had taught her the hard way that true strength isn't in domination, but in humility. And while she couldn't change the past, the lessons from this painful chapter would stay with her forever.